What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Tap Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed, and I want to thank you all for tuning in here and hanging out with us for this macro live stream update. Now, I have two guests who will be joining me here. We are waiting on one of them. That's Viva LaCoin, but I've got the second guest who is Cash. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring up the man himself. Cash, welcome to Tap Central.
Thanks, man. I know we had our little chat before we started, but happy to be here and excited to kind of get involved a little bit, see what you guys got cooking.
Yeah, thank you for giving us a little bit of your time. I think we'll probably kick things off with an introduction to yourself and what you've contributed to Cardano and just how you ended up in the space. And hopefully that gives Viva a little bit of time to jump in here, and he'll be sort of our guide when it comes to the macro market. So I'd love to maybe just kind of kick things off with just a little bit about you. As I mentioned, for anybody who's just seeing you and hearing you for the first time, can you give us a little bit about your background and how you came into Cardano and crypto?
Sure. And, obviously, if you need me to buy more time, I can rant forever. So you just give me the thumbs up. No, I'm kidding. But my name's Cash, also known as Zach nowadays, or I used to be known as Zach. But yeah, I come from a traditional background in Web 2. I was a train mechanic. I used to work on actual transportation trains, locomotives, diesel locomotives. Started off as a mechanic, cleaning out the toilets, bottom of the barrel. And then I worked my way up to a product manager and a platform manager role. I was working on the maintenance of 8 locomotives for the state of Maryland. I did that for 12 years. So I did it for quite a long time. I learned a lot about industry. I learned a lot about how things work. And then during the COVID era, right, of course, I got into crypto. It was the perfect time. Everybody's at home. I learned how to do some mining operations, started with some random stuff like Raven Coin and all these other things. And then my buddy messaged me one day. He's like, hey, man, I know we're looking into cryptos. What do you think about Cardano? And I said, I've never heard of it. Right. So, instinctively, I took out my life savings and I invested it all into Cardano. Right. No, I'm kidding. But I did look into it. Me and him were extremely bullish on what they were trying to accomplish with governance, with decentralization. And, that's stuck true to this day. Right. Like, it's still something I highly value. That said, right, I only bought it as an investment at the time. At the time, I was kind of doing more around like the Ethereum NFTs, stuff on Super Rare. I was really getting into that kind of stuff and trying to learn as much as I could. And then it ultimately led me to Cardano having NFTs, right? I learned about Cardano NFTs shortly after SpaceBud's launch. I got into a mint called Politicos, and the rest is history. I started sending 20 ADA in. It was a vending machine wallet, and I was just like, this is not good, but also really good, right? Like, I love this. It's everything that ETH doesn't have, which is cheap transactions, the ability to kind of have this native asset on chain. And I just fell in love. And that's where I kind of got my first big opportunity in the space. A project called Cardano City launched. And I became one of I kind of nominated myself because the Discord was an absolute mess. It was like degen paradise. There was no moderators. It was the Wild Wild West. And I jumped in and said, look, I'll volunteer my time for free. I was still working my other job, but I had just gotten so entranced by this space. I wanted to do something. And that was when I became a mod. I became a community mod for Cardano City. And I started my Twitter account, right? Crypto Twitter, all that from scratch in 2021. So everything has been earned. Built, not bought, as I like to say. But we worked our way. I worked through Cardano City, and that led me to meet my original partner in the space, which was Benjamin. And we started Benjamin's Club. It was an art-based club, kind of, with a membership that, you bought the NFT, you got access to the Discord, et cetera, et cetera. And then we decided to kind of expand on that idea, create a bigger collection. And then ultimately that led me to the need to have a developer. And back in 2021, it was almost impossible to find a developer for anything. So what that did was it created this niche for us that we filled, which was Ada Anvil, right? We created this development agency. We do things for all types of different projects, all types of different scopes. We do a lot of custom work. We do pretty much anything you could think of, and we're going to even amplify that even more in this next Catalyst round. We got some crazy ideas we're cooking up, but that's like the brief story for me. You know, obviously we just launched our marketplace Way Up. So we got a lot of cool stuff going, man. I'm just blessed to be able to do this full time and share this and share my story with people. I truly do love this space. And Cardano's like, it's just people don't realize it till they like actually get addicted to it, but it's one of the most special places that I've ever been, and groups of people that I've ever been a part of. So I'll never forget that. And our goal is always to put Cardano at the forefront of everything we do, including talking to, you know, some Web2 brands. We're doing a lot of stuff trying to get involved in that sector. And, you know, we'll probably cover some of that during the call here.
Yeah, we definitely will. Solid introduction. If you guys are not already familiar or following Cash, links are down below as a part of today's video description. We do have Viva hanging out backstage, so I'll bring him up here in just a minute. And let me actually go ahead and just bring him up now. Viva, what's up, man?
What is up? Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Loud
sir.
and clear.
It never fails. I was blacklisted from Wi-Fi, from the universe. X always messes up. It's like I'm relying on the smartest, richest people on the planet to keep these networks going, but we did it.
Yeah, no, we're happy to have you here, and thank you for sparing us some of your time in your busy schedule. I want to quickly pivot back over to Cash a little bit, and then Viva will come over to you. But yeah, it's interesting, you know, just listening into how everybody's come into the space. For me, I definitely haven't been here as long as you have, Cash, but to see what you've been able to do and contribute and even build, you know, I think it's been pretty impressive to watch grow. I know Way Up has been sort of like the last endeavor. I haven't been able to really cover it as much as I'd like to on my channel, but I think, you know, it definitely deserves that credibility and the visibility. You know, building here in this space, it's not easy. There's a lot of competition out there, but to be able to, number one, build a staking platform that's gotten as much adoption as Anvil has, followed by something like Way Up, I think it's huge, right? So it's definitely not an easy process, but thankful for your commitment and thankful for your contributions here into the space. Now over to Viva. It's been a minute. The last time we had this call, it went extremely well. By far one of the best streams that I've had here. A lot of compliments coming your way. People even comparing you to Charles Hoskinson. I was very impressed by that. You know, not only do you speak like him, you have the same exact beard. So I think it was a really good chat. But how have you been since then, man?
Phenomenal. Things have been, I'm sure you get the same answer from Cash or anyone else. It's like you're the busiest you've ever been, but it's also in tandem with all these other like inflection points of a market that is defined cyclically by things out of our control. So it's been chaotic on all fronts, but in a very good way. I think seeing a lot of the development over the course of the past like 2-3 months, or since we spoke, I think it was mid-March, so it might have only been like a month and a week or two. But even watching some of the stuff that takes place outside of our ecosystem, which you might think doesn't necessarily impact us, but whether it be the halving, it impacts Cardano. It could be all of the Rune stuff with UTXO. All of a sudden, everyone's talking about Cardano's interoperability. How can we get all these different smart contracts and get into like the Ethereum sphere of influence? Well, it turns out we have the same sort of coding language and breakdown with UTXO on Cardano. So seeing teams like Fluid Tokens and those guys step up and try and bridge that gap, it makes me beyond happy, because it's like the two corners of the overall industry that resonate with me the most out of principle, starting to realize that a lot of that base infrastructure was coming from the same long-term thought process. So all in all, couldn't complain. And you told me Cash was going to be on, and I got really excited. We've worked together now for a little over probably 2 years from the Omen and Ammonium side, but just in general, some of the greatest people in the space, phenomenal developers. Everything is top tier with them. So if you were going to bring someone on and talk anything development wise, you picked the right guy.
I'm happy to hear. I think today's conversation will be a pretty interesting one. And I know last time we took a couple of questions from the community. So I do want to urge all the viewers that are here tuning in, watching live, feel free to go ahead and leave your questions or comments or just opinions as a part of that chat. And we'll go ahead and pick some of those in and sort of dive into those. Now, I think there's a couple of ways for us to go here. I know last time our conversation was focused mainly on the macro. I do think that that offers a little bit of clarity, and it's a little bit different than the normal content that I provide here too. So I'd love to maybe just jump into that a little bit. Obviously, pick a little bit of your brain and Cash's as well. And so I think one of the bigger topics is what you just mentioned there, the Bitcoin halving, right? So I'd love to hear, what your guys' thoughts are surrounding the impact that the halving has, and then also just hearing about where you guys think we are in the current cycle. Now, following that, Cash had mentioned something interesting, which was Project Catalyst and his team applying for funding round number 12. So I actually just got done watching the live stream. For anybody who missed it, there was a huge kickoff party taking place in Barcelona, if I'm not mistaken. And that was introducing a lot of new features for Project Catalyst funding round number 12. And so we can dive into that a little bit, potentially some of the ideas that you guys have for funding. And then there was a really cool category introduced, right, to bring on board big players. So I'll go ahead and queue up a little bit of that content here so I can share that as you guys are speaking. But before we dive into that, I'd love to, again, jump into the macro, right? So in terms of just where the economy is, I'll probably give Viva a head start here. I'll let you go first. Cash, feel free to go ahead and just kind of gather your thoughts and write down any points that you want to highlight. But Viva, where do we stand in terms of the macro market? Obviously, there's been a couple of recent Fed meetings. There's been the Bitcoin halving. What is of most importance to you, and what have you been sort of watching in the markets when it comes to the bigger picture outside of Cardano?
So you're going to be happy because I knew that this was the direction we were going to go. So I actually, Fart was yelling at me. She's like, "Why are you sending me all these tweets and stuff?" I'm like, "I'm getting them ready for Fareed in DApp Central." But I'm forwarding a couple things over to you because anytime looking at the macro side, it takes a long time for things to play out. So one thing that the crypto space is always abysmal with is any type of bandwidth of attention span or patience. And there are plenty of people that are saying, well, look, like we've dealt with inflation, the labor market's strong, Bitcoin's at all-time highs prior to the halving, things are great. And we talked about this when I was on last with you, that at a certain point, you have indicators that are rapid responses to, let's say, a Fed tightening cycle or the increased interest rates. And a lot of those leading economic indicators start to crater and prices start to come down. Now, I sent you a couple different threads, and this is one of my favorite charts ever because you're looking at something that is more economical based and then looking at S&P forward earnings. So the things that get hit initially in companies like UPS and FedEx, anyone that ships different things, they're saying we're seeing weakness in terms of the amount of volume when it comes to shipping, weakness in the consumer actually purchasing or sending things. That's ringing alarm bells, but it typically occurs prior to the reaction from the forward earnings or anything that people are pricing in the markets. And I have put up so many different threads trying to highlight that just because the markets are up, that does not mean that we have a healthy economy. And there was an initial post, I sent you a couple, but there's one that I put up it was at the start of the year. It was kind of the 2024 opening my macroeconomic thoughts. And I DM those to you. That's a separate thing with Bitcoin. I can touch on that first if you want, but I think understanding the bigger picture can help to sort of wrap a idea around this.
And
so
before you continue, let me know, because I've got all the tabs pulled up here. So just let me know which one it is, and I'll go ahead and just pull up the graphic. That way there's a little bit of context as you're speaking.
So that was the initial one when I was putting up my thoughts in January. And I said, here's the problem with this soft landing that everyone expects, and that the Fed saying we're going to cut 3 to 7 times in 2024, they're incorrect and they're not going to cut. And here's why. So what we're seeing right now in an increase in reinflation, in the market staying absurdly high, but the job market being strong, which it isn't. And I have another chart I'll send over to you. Sure, employment is relatively stable if you're only taking paychecks cut, but you have to look at how many jobs are individuals working. Full-time employment is sinking pretty drastically. Part-time employment is increasing. All while you have this pause, and the Fed is looking at this and saying, oh, okay, so if inflation comes down, then we can begin to ease monetary policy and start to cut the interest rate so we can go back and stimulate the economy and bring things back to when they're supposed to go. The problem is, just like in 2007, 2008, you see a drop of inflation. It went down to about 1.5% when they first paused in 2007. By the time they were forced to cut, it was back up to around 5.5%, because you're not dealing with the long-term issues of inflation. You just have those early reactionary things. You have to slow down and directly impact the economy. But we are basing this off of data that is incorrect. So there was one I sent over to you, and it's all about the labor market, but it starts talking about the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index. And in that post, I'm essentially saying we got the worst reading when it comes to small business sentiment in their outlook over the course of the coming months that we've had in about 11 and a half years. Now, in an economy that's supposed to be booming and everyone is excited about how strong the labor market is, why are all of these sentiment surveys and small businesses laying people off and all these jobs are incorrect? But in that post, I essentially break down they're getting squeezed and everyone else is getting crushed, because the job data that is coming in, especially around employment, because I work in payroll, I know where the data comes from. It has been incorrect. And we've seen this happen time and time again, where you have initial job reporting, but all of the negative revisions and all of the state revisions downward are not showing the actual strength or health of the economy. And when was the last time that occurred? And if you hit next on the slides, you can see in 2008, we did literally the exact same thing. So we're misreporting the jobs to show, okay, we have a strong economy. You have inflation starting to rip higher the moment the Fed pauses. And then inevitably, when we cut for the wrong reasons, because employment isn't strong and rates are far too high, but we're basing it off of incorrect data, the market goes with it. So that initial chart you put up where it shows the S&P running off into the skyline, and air and logistics and travel and consumer spending and everything is just disintegrating, that is indicative that the market is incorrect, because the market based their information of the projections of what Jerome Powell and the Fed have said. And they came out in December, right around when everything took off in that next leg up, especially in like AI stocks, big tech, traditional finance. And they went in 2 weeks from the start of December saying, we're not even saying cut. We're higher for longer, forever. We're never going to cut. And within 2 weeks, he came back out and said, well, we're thinking at minimum 3 cuts. The market price is in 7. And I'm ringing the bell. I'm like, they're not going to cut once. We haven't dealt with inflation. Inflation is already beginning to tick back up. And the consumer that spent all their money and has all-time high credit card debt at these interest rates, and all these small businesses and all the loans that need to be paid, these regional banks, all the bad corporate real estate with $1 trillion hitting maturity that needs to be refinanced this year, they're all plugging into this idea that interest rates are going to be cut for the right reasons and that we have economic strength. And everyone was wrong. And the only reason the Fed is saying, hey, we're going to cut, you got everyone on the wrong side of the trade. Everyone's in markets. Everyone's amped up. But then secondly, they are going to be forced to pivot because the amount of debt in the system, both for individuals, the amount of credit card debt, even in delinquency that's being rolled over and falling on top of their heads, all the bonds that these banks have been upside down on, all the empty office buildings that are being marked down 50 to 80%, and all of the international pressure from BRICS as they put in their BRICS pay system and they're dumping US dollars and they're looking to de-dollarize. There's far too much risk in the system to have the lowest risk premiums in pretty much ever. We're asleep at the wheel and saying everything is just going to be fine. They're going to have to cut. If not to save the everyday consumer, these credit card companies, then it's the banks or it's corporate real estate, or it's to try and give us breathing room in some of the geopolitical stuff. Oil jumping back up in price absolutely exacerbates the issue. And you have multiple different points of conflict, which has also been a massive thing on my radar. I was looking back at my DMs. There's a friend I had in the space back in 2021. And he lived in Norway, but it was coming up towards like the end of 2021. And we were talking about the tensions growing between Russia and the Ukraine. And I was like, I think that they're going to attack, not necessarily because Russia stands to benefit greatly from it. And inevitably, it led to the entire strengthening of BRICS because they were kicked out of the SWIFT system and it galvanized their entire mission. But I said, this is a proxy to begin to tie the U.S. against them in conflict between the Ukraine, if they were to jump off there, in Taiwan, which everyone time and time again has said there will not be conflict with Taiwan. China doesn't care. Everything is fine. And yet we just cleared a $95 billion spending package, which sent money three places: Ukraine, proxy war number one; Israel, proxy war number two with Iran, who was just added to BRICS in January. And then finally, we just sent money to Taiwan, because we now face a systemic risk, not only in markets that price everything in with these chips, everything in with AI, everything in with the secular bull run, but 60% of all of those components and everything that is built, now a matter of national security and market stability, come out of Taiwan, that China has openly said we are going to reinstitute them as a part of our main nation of China. And they've been running military drills over them ever since Russia took that first plunge. Those risks are not things that people are going to care about when you're talking about cross-chain or why isn't ADA going up. Doesn't matter. The thing that matters is, if you have any type of value, can you capture it, insulate it, protect it, and use it? And that's it. Everything else apart from that. That's why I still don't think the people that are in precious metals, everyone in crypto loves to make fun of gold and silver. They're at all-time highs. They're pressing up even through those massive banking shorts on them, because the rest of the world understands that things are about to get incredibly weird, and they do not want to be exposed to U.S. debt. All those other nations like you and I, when we say, hey, I'm opting out of the system, I'm going into Bitcoin, I'm going into Cardano, I'm looking for decentralization. They don't have the luxury as nations or nation states to say, oh, let's just support decentralization. They have their own population. They have their own ultimatum of control in corralling their population. But they said, we still have to opt out of this system. We need to find a better way to do this, because the dollar is spiraling out of control. And the amount of debt that we had to put into this system, even over the course of the last year with market tightening, we injected $2.3 trillion in the Fed's reverse repo that was left over slush fund from all the COVID and pandemic printing. We've injected all but about $350 billion of that into markets, not even counting the Fed term or the bank term funding program that backstopped failing banks from this time last year until now, because they're still underwater. So like, these cycles that we're in crypto is one thing. There are larger cycles outside of crypto in traditional finance that, even if it is to hedge it, even if it is to opt out, you still need your on and off ramps at this moment. You still need to be able to get in and out of the market. Or if you're going to take profit, are you going to take it in a failing fiat currency that inflation is continuing to spike and continuing to run away? You're going to take all your profits and put it back with your friends over at Silicon Valley Bank because you're crypto enthusiasts and investors, and then have the entire bank implode? Because that isn't like a conspiracy theory. That is what happened. That is how underwater these institutions are and how over leveraged they are. Even Signature Bank, which they blame crypto as the reason why they failed, they were all purchased, like $38 billion of their assets were purchased by New York Community Bank, which is down 70% on the year and already had to be bailed out, or else they were going to collapse because they're so exposed to the same toxic garbage in corporate real estate. So once you start to understand the broader picture of, sure, number goes up, that's fine. Like, I was saying when ADA was under 30 cents, that's my buy zone. Anything else after that, I have no reason to sit here and tell people to buy stuff. I look at the bottoms, and then where is the risk and how do we maximize that opportunity or protect ourselves? There were two other things I wanted to show you just on those initial posts. But of course, if anyone's looking for them or wants to find them, I could repost them today or something like that. There was one that overlaid Bitcoin from the peak back in 2021 with the NASDAQ composite. So everyone's talking about this new all-time high runaway bull market. And I'm sitting here and I'm staring at this and I'm like, well, the NASDAQ composite, all these tech companies, minus your handful of AI tech company narratives, that looks relatively the same. That looks about like the same top, but you have these narratives about NVIDIA and these narratives about like, oh, Bitcoin is just ripping up. We're at the same spot that we were in 2021, but with all this additional debt and all this additional risk. And we followed traditional finance to a T, regardless of what was happening with FTX, regardless of what was happening with the insolvencies or the implosion of Luna Terra, we followed traditional markets to a T. So if you start to have a breakdown in traditional finance, I do not believe we are decoupled in any way, shape, or form in order to insulate ourselves from that. And I also feel as though the reason why they cleared those spot ETFs early, even though they still refuse to define anything about the crypto market, is now is the best time to assume any bit of control over a market that you cannot control. So we know that the BlackRocks and Fidelities of the world have purchased majority stake in all these mining companies and the Marathon Digitals of the world. And now we see them buying up billions of dollars worth of spot Bitcoin. But the only things that we can do is go and peer-to-peer verse each other, gambling meme tokens and blowing up portfolios and, gaslighting each other into making limitless generational wealth, when a lot of new money hasn't really come into the space. And if it is coming in, those going through the process of adoption, they're versing market veterans that are front running them and pre-sailing everything that they're getting and just churning and burning. So they have no reason to stop that blatant fraud. They'll actually promote it and get everything listed. And if we're our own worst enemies, we're doing half their job for them. But then the second thing was I sent over a couple different charts around historical indicators that a lot of people like to use for Bitcoin over the course of a 4-year cycle. And if anyone listening is interested or wants to hear what those or see what those are like, you could go look into bitcoin.com, and they'll have a litany of different statistics and data. Some of the ones that people are more familiar with is like the rainbow, logarithmic ribbon or stock to flow model from Plan B. But I'm looking at a lot of these, and it's not all of them, but most of them. And I'm seeing a trend, and that trend, it could be wrong. And even in this post, I said, maybe all of these past indicators and all of these outlook, measurements, maybe they're incorrect and we can just resign those to the halls of history. But at the moment, it's looking incredibly, incredibly toppy, like cycle-esque toppy. Now, will that play out that way? I don't know. We've never faced a recession, which we will be acknowledging in the US soon enough. Even manufacturing PMI and everything came back. Our GDP's down. Everything else looks like trash. But a lot of those indicators are showing that we're kind of around where that top would be. And we did hit all-time high prior to the halving, because it was gaslit up by 2 false announcements of ETF clearances, which didn't amount to anything. And then the actual ETF clearance, which never flowed anywhere into alts or the rest of our market to benefit anyone in retail that built this industry. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I feel it is better if you want exposure, then DCA or do whatever you want. I don't care at this point. I can't tell anyone what to do. I found through the years that the absolute best thing that I could do is be in places of value early. So that's fine. I don't care. The market could drop another 90% and I'm still in profit. Doesn't matter to me. But what does matter is not being overextended to the point where if there is more opportunity, or if something catastrophic happens, or if a massive conglomerate with trillions of dollars like BlackRock says, you know what, we don't necessarily care if there's new all-time highs this year. We have enough sidelined. It doesn't matter if the miners get paid or if they can turn a profit, because we'll just spin it up, or we'll purchase them. We own the stock. We'll just buy more. But everyone in this market cannot bear to have it not happen. And I do not like those odds when you're playing against institutions that became what they became because they got everyone on the opposite side of whatever they were going to do. That is their MO and how they operate. And they are now a part of this market. So it's just good things to counterbalance perspectives and to take a look at it. But still doesn't mean I'm not eternally optimistic on everything that we're trying to do here. But I don't want to see people round trip stuff again for the third time or for the fourth time. Like, it gets exhausting because everyone assumes like, oh, okay, no, it's got to be 100,000 by the end of 21. And oh no, like Lunaterra is the new, it's just enough's enough. Like, it's okay to talk about the reality, the situation. And if it goes the other way, then we would have won. So it's the best possible outcome in that case, and I'll gracefully accept that.
Nice. And I just want to reiterate here, I'm learning so much from a macro perspective when you speak. If anybody's just hearing Viva for the first time, please make sure to go ahead and follow him on Twitter. I try to do my best to keep up with some of the things that you were mentioning and trying to share that here for the community. But if you guys want to hear directly from him as he's releasing these posts, make sure to go ahead and follow him on X. Now, before I turn it over to Cash, I want to highlight just a couple of things and just summarize, some of the key takeaways that I got from you. So from what I hear from you, big picture, right? You believe that right now we are in a state where the economy is not necessarily doing well, even though the charts are showing the opposite, right? And I mentioned this in my last talk with you, is that I think that we're like in this mega, in the bigger picture of things, in this sort of 18-year cycle, right? Where we're going to have, I think, in my eyes, this period for, I think, anywhere between a year or two where everyone's going to be able to get rich, right? But the same thing that happens in every cycle is going to happen in this cycle. My only concern is that we're not going to bounce back as quickly as we have in times past. So I think we're going to have something, for example, like we had with 2008, where leading into that, a lot of people thought things were okay. And what I think is going to happen this time is we are going to get the Bitcoin bull run, but I think we're going to have a huge potential recession following that. And I think that is the case based off of what you've mentioned about, the labor markets and all those other things that you've mentioned in your piece. Now, one other thing that you mentioned too is investing, and I want to tie this back over into Cardano, of course, is investing at the lows, right? So I have a lot of friends that were hitting me up when Cardano was at like the 60 or 75 cent range. And they're like, hey, is this a good opportunity for me to get in? And I'm just like, man, at 24 cents is when you should have been calling me and asking me about when to get into Cardano, And so I do have one or two of them that jumped in at the very last minute. And now they're the ones complaining. So I really do agree with what you mentioned earlier. It's like the earlier you're able to get in and do what doesn't necessarily feel good at that time, you're going to be rewarded for that at a later time. But when you're coming in at 75 cents and Cardano's already done, a 2x, and you're expecting for it to just keep on going up, I think that's very unrealistic. So I do want to tie this back into the Cardano ecosystem and just crypto. But I want to give Cash an opportunity to also weigh in here from a macro perspective. So, Cash, I see you taking a lot of notes there. Over to you. You've got the spotlight.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try and follow that up with anything. I'm not as deep into it as Viva is. Obviously, he's just a freak of nature when it comes to talking about these kind of things. I'm learning too, right? That was very information. I got a lot of good information out of that, and it's more than anything, like, the data is great, but like, you make my brain start to turn a little bit, right? Like, I start to connect these things that I never thought that were connected before. I start to think about all these things. And of course, right, I felt like a very either local or actual top. I've been feeling that a lot lately, right? But like Viva said, we all knew this was going to happen. I bought all my ADA this cycle at 25 cents when I had the opportunity, because if I was willing to buy it at $3 and telling myself, wow, I wish I had the chance to buy more at 30 cents, Well, it hit 30 cents. So I bought more. I literally cashed out my 401k. I took everything out of the institutions and I put it all into crypto, Bitcoin and ADA primarily. Definitely not financial advice. I know I took a huge risk, right? But I'm never going to tell anybody to buy ADA ever. The only time I did that was at 25 cents. And I told my close friends, close family, said, hey, I'm buying everything now that I can. I'm not going to buy it at 50 cents. I'm not going to buy it at 75 cents. This is when I'm buying it because this is when I think the best opportunity is based on what we've seen before in the past. To me, Viva's points make a lot of sense, but I hope they don't. Like, if that makes any sense as well, because if this was the top for Bitcoin, right, then why didn't Cardano have its moment of $3? You know what I mean? Why? We saw it on ETH, right? ETH went to 4,000. Solana went to 200 and almost $50, if I'm not mistaken, but Cardano never passed $1, right? So it doesn't click in my brain. Like, I can't truly believe that it was the top just because of that, when I know how much good stuff is coming for Cardano. But then again, right, it doesn't matter. You could have released anything you wanted to during the bear market, and you can't move that price. It doesn't matter what news you're releasing, what big event you have. It just isn't ever going to change that price as long as Bitcoin is where it is, right? You're very limited, almost like we talk about not decoupling from the traditional market. It's the same in the crypto market. Nothing's decoupled from Bitcoin, right? It's the truth. Like, I don't know, but for me, I think about things like Catalyst. I think about things like that could actually help stimulate the Cardano economy, because it truly could have its own economy to an extent. And then, why cash out? I don't need to cash out if I can pay for my groceries with ADA, right? I don't need to cash out. I can take the bets on what I believe in. And if I don't really feel good, I can go to a stable coin, right? But betting on the dollar, I agree. Like, the only reason we cash out any crypto as a business right now is for payroll, right? Other than that, it stays where it's at. I'm totally cool with it swinging 20 cents in a month because I have long-term faith in Cardano. I do not have long-term faith in the US dollar. So, I'm obviously not as sharp as Viva there, but that's my two Lovelace on it.
No, I think that was very, very awesome. And it's always good to get the different perspectives. I do want to quickly go ahead and just share that 18-year cycle again, which I highlighted in our prior talk with Viva. And this is exactly where I think we are, right? Where we're going to get this final run up, even though we know that the economy is in a poor state. Again, the markets just do what the markets want. I don't recall which country it is, but I know there's a country that's under technical recession that's also just made brand new all-time highs in the stock markets, right? So again, I don't think that there's a direct correlation. Maybe the stock markets are leading, but I think that we're somewhere here in this winter's curse where we will potentially get this altcoin season. It will be, short-lived, maybe 6 to 8 months. And then after that, it's going to be a huge flush to the downside where everybody gets reset, just like we had in 2008. So again, that was just my 2 cents. Cash, I appreciate your insights there. And Viva, of course, appreciate you taking the lead and really dropping a lot of alpha and a lot of knowledge there. Now, before we dive into Cardano a little bit deeper, I want to highlight a particular personality, and I want to maybe just kind of hear where you guys think his views are. So I've been watching a little bit more of Ben Cohen, right? And he talks a lot about the macro. And one of the things that he talks about is quantitative tightening and quantitative easing. And so he believes that we're not going to get the altcoin season that we're all looking for, which is where Cardano blows past $3, potential up to $10, right? Depending on how you analyze the market. But he doesn't believe that that's going to come until we get looser monetary policy. The last time that we got that was right after everybody got their stimmy checks or the stimulus checks, right? Following COVID. And so when I look back and when I watch more and more of his content, I'm really beginning to see the correlation between when the government was, pumping money or printing money in alt season and the opposite. And so that ties back into the Bitcoin value of some of these assets, right? So what he also dives in very deeply into is how are these assets that we know are riskier than Bitcoin, how are they faring against Bitcoin? And so I look back in, again, from a macro picture, I understand that Bitcoin and crypto, right, as Viva mentioned, are somewhat of a derivative. Like however the general stock market moves, that's going to be how crypto moves. But then within that, a layer deeper, you have altcoins that move very similar to Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin's down, altcoins are historically down, but when we have this looser monetary policy, that's when we begin to really see things which are risk on, right? Including altcoins really beginning to outperform Bitcoin in the traditional markets. So I say all that to say, what are your guys' thoughts surrounding his theory? Do you guys watch Ben Cohen at all? Do you guys believe that we're not going to see that alt season until we get that looser monetary policy? I'd love to hear both of you guys' takes on that. Oh, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I was trying to fight in the sun here, trying to. So a couple things. One, I actually just commented on one of Ben's posts not too long ago, just basically saying like, hey, thanks for doing what you do. Because I feel like for anyone that has an audience, you talk about a winner's curse. Almost anyone that is like a larger influencer inevitably just succumbs to the space and launches a meme token, destroys their reputation, or almost like I'll just coin the term like bit boys themselves. And I feel like he's always come from a place where even if what I say is uncomfortable, or if what a chart I put up isn't aligning with your up only beliefs, that's okay. I'm still going to share it. And I think he's become known for being like a little bit more unbiased in certain terms in the space. As far as not getting an alt season, I think you have to break it down into a couple different concepts. So the first thing is when you have those ETFs open up that everyone was excited about, oh, there's going to be billions and billions of dollars coming in. That's not making it in to any of the alts. That is sitting in institutional Bitcoin ETF funds that are 90% under the control of Coinbase, which is their Trojan horse of choice over the course of the next couple of years. Despite being in lawsuits with them, they've already been chosen, and USDC is the chosen pseudo CBDC of the time being, since they don't have their full Fed ledger CBDC ready yet. Now, in this given case, you're not seeing more money float into altcoins for a couple reasons. One, the majority of retail is broke. They are bone dry, bank account broke. And a lot of the people in this market, until recently, until that last big push around like the fall outside of Bitcoin, even Solana and these other altcoins weren't really seeing a massive jump. I mean, maybe Solana, because let's not forget, it ran up 20x. Yeah, but it also collapsed down to $8 because it's like the side hustle of Sam Bankman-Fried, who is in prison right now. So, take that with a grain of salt. But when you have all this money that's supposed to be coming in, it's not coming from retail because they have no money. And it's not coming from institutions because if they want recent exposure, they're going to spot ETFs. Where is it coming from then when you look at recently on Solana or Base? Where's all this liquidity coming from? So all it takes is a little injection or a little idea of, okay, things have been so stagnant, I want to be able to make money. And then you can convince people to jump over to that chain. You can convince newcomers to come in because I'll be honest, 95% of people, albeit they don't understand what they're doing, they come in here to make money. And by money, I mean that disintegrating fiat that inevitably will rug them anyway. But they come here to make money, and these chains have immense amounts of money already stuck within them. And there was a great example, and I'm so glad it happened because now I can actually paint a picture as to what's going on. If anyone saw the recent news with HBAR, right, and their real world asset connection to BlackRock, and this is great. And it was never like real news. It wasn't like grounded in anything. BlackRock came out and they were like, we have no idea what they're talking about. So you have all this insider money that is stuck within these VC chains. And it's been stuck there since 2021. They have not been able to exit either because an unexpected collapse from Luna Terra and the extensive damage it did, or FTX failing sooner than it was supposed to. So all of this institutional money and all of these venture capital firms that put billions of dollars into these tokens, they're just underwater. So if you need to incentivize people to come in and give you your own money back, okay, we're down $500 million. What's another 100 million? We'll throw it in and we'll just give it to them in an airdrop. Yeah, that's exciting. We'll just give it. We'll give them something in an airdrop, and of course, we'll allocate a big portion to ourselves. And maybe there's some meme tokens, and you got some liquidity. Look, USDC loves us. We're direct partners of the World Economic Forum. This is great. So you have money coming in, but the majority of traders are gambling and the majority of traders are losing. Sure, like I know personally, there are people that are incredibly tapped in and they're on the forefront of every change in the wind. They're cleaning up and good for them. I'm not against anyone participating however they want. The space is decentralized. I still stand by that. If you want to do something, as long as it's not directly robbing people, like face to face or running your own scam. If you want to go and gamble on that because you understand what you're doing, then by all means go ahead. But the majority of people don't. And it eliminates that entire concept of adoption, right? Because there is no adoption there. What are you adopting them into? Like you're adopting them into a meme token hype cycle, and they're never going to find their grounding. And the majority of them don't even understand what like a policy idea is. So adoption, that's a false narrative. The liquidity, coming in from the ETFs, that's a false narrative. You have USDT printing this entire year of 2023 and backing up the price of Bitcoin and plunge protecting it and false ETF announcements. The same thing that HBAR did when they said, yeah, we have some people that are stuck and they want their money back. Oh, well, we'll announce we're going to partner up with you for real world assets, and then we'll all take everyone's money again and it'll be fine. Now, you might say, well, there's no way that they're colluding and doing that together. But the HBAR Council, this giant conglomerate of institutions, they are not in some basement and there's a handful of developers you've never heard of. There are companies like IBM and Google and large, like Fortune 100, NASDAQ 100 companies a part of that. They're not going to announce that they're partnering up to tokenize all of BlackRock stuff and then let it sit there across all institutions, all governance members, and from BlackRock, sit there for 24 hours until they clarify it. You would have everyone suing everyone. Like the amount of money that people would have lost, including on the inside in their positions, if they were in any type of active position. So why is everyone silent for a day and then the price tanks 80% after they clear it and you have all the big sales? It's the same thing. Where is our liquidity stuck? Because we don't care about this tech. We need a CBDC and we need to obfuscate how we define the regulatory aspects, and we need to break self-custody and the on-ramps and sue the exchanges. And I'll add one more, and we mentioned it the last time. The first thing the Department of Justice did whenever they took over Binance was delist Monero because it's also privacy. So it is a calculated decision on their part, and it makes me uneasy. Why is there no focus on Cardano? For the same reason that everyone that called or that used Bitcoin for the first decade of its existence was a criminal. They were a drug trafficker. They were a scumbag piece of garbage, because these banks that own the media companies that have mutual beneficiaries in every step of the traditional process stand to lose everything if decentralized cryptocurrency exists and does well and people can access it. And right now, even with Cardano, I've been very vocal about I'm not going to call them shortcomings, I guess would be the word that a lot of people use. There's not a single person in this space or anyone that's ever worked in project management in a new innovative thing that has never been done, right? Because you're not just setting, I need to build this IKEA furniture and it says it's supposed to take X amount of time and here are the instructions. A lot of this is research and development. A lot of this is implemented across 1,000 different independent, previously unconnected teams. You have tight liquidity and misconstrued expectations of the space. where anything that is reported en masse stands to greatly, or it's to their own great detriment if any of that works. So I do err on the side of it is unfair representation, but I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I can't believe they're doing it. The entire reason this industry exists is because we expected them to continue to do it. So at this point, focusing on Bitcoin, which I'm glad that a lot of people are going back and utilizing it for ordinals or runes or whatever else, which oddly enough, we still have less active Bitcoin wallets and addresses at the moment than we did at any point in 2020, 2021. That's kind of odd, isn't it? At all-time highs with everyone also being on Bitcoin and participating. But we also have Cardano with the same sort of contract, obviously different, but look at the strengths of this market. And when that does inevitably collapse, it's not about pricing it in US dollars. It's what is nailed to the ground enough that it will not be eliminated or destroyed or psyoped into centralized, just random like garbage that will not stand to benefit us ever. And you protect that and you scale it, even with governance. And this is the last thing I'll say because I know I'm on another rant. But with governance, I believe that we are rushing to an extent through the governance process, because until we get those keys out of the hands of those entities, if the SEC is sitting there and they're laying out their documents, they're like, well, we've called them a security multiple times. Pretty sure on CoinMarketCap, it still has us listed as a potential security in our bio. They would have to move on those entities. The moment we get rid of those keys and actually push it into the age of Voltaire, it allows us to come up for air when everyone else that is just building super fast on sand, and they're saying, oh, look, we're essentially the next Visa, but it's a cool logo and you can have a dog meme token launch every 5 minutes. They're going to drop the rods of God on that and destroy that entire market. And if you're over there and that's like your value prop of this space, this is the final cycle for that. I can promise you.
Very nice points there. It sounds like there's liquidity extraction as opposed to liquidity actually coming in, which is what we need in order to get that much needed and that much wanted alt season. One thing that you mentioned that really sort of got my attention was the piece around HBAR and how you think that was actually coordinated in order to extract liquidity. I personally didn't even think about that, but when I do think about the same sort of exact thing that happened with Gary Gensler and their Twitter account getting hacked at the worst possible time ever, I was just like, man, that's kind of sketchy. And I remember there was like over tens of millions of dollars in liquidations that happened in like a matter of an hour. And so I think from a market manipulation perspective, the more that I'm seeing this happen, especially with what you just mentioned with HBAR, the more I'm just like, okay, maybe there is some truth to this, that like this is just being done in order to extract liquidity as opposed to bringing it in. And again, from a coordination standpoint, the people that are involved in these, they know their name has weight, so BlackRock, they know their name has weight. So whenever they attach that to anybody, right, they know things are going to happen, especially when you're in a highly speculative environment like we are in crypto. So again, I want to thank you, Viva, there for that really nice input. Cash, over to you. What are your thoughts surrounding, Ben Cohen, the monetary policy? And then let's go ahead and just end off today's show by diving into Cardano and ending on that note.
Sure. So you guys made some interesting points, Viva. You're the man seeing behind the Iron Curtain, and I love that. I never thought about that either, but it makes total sense, right? Who makes a actual like well done designed marketing template like that, and it sits out there for that long, and then all of a sudden, oh wait, it was a lie, but the price went up 96% and then down 90. It doesn't really make any sense. It's very similar to what I saw recently on, I've seen it on Instagram, it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter. Senator, congressman, whatever it is, buys meta shares in advancement of the TikTok ban, right? Like it's the same thing. Like it doesn't matter. Crypto to them is just a new landscape to scam people. Like that's the way that I see it. Again, like I'm not good at playing into anything. I'm not good at short-term investments. The only thing I'm good at is buying something and holding it. So I take the approach that Viva takes very seriously. And that's exactly what I do is I buy things when I think that I will get them at the point. And this doesn't correlate to my NFT trading, but for my main actual trading and what I plan on like using as retirement money and things like that, I try to be very safe, right? And you can't trade based on news. You can't trade based on any of that stuff. The ETF was the perfect example. And, listening to what you're saying, it makes total sense, and you never really think of it like that till somebody puts it in your face and you're forced to think outside the box. There was no increase in price during all that, right? Like that, all these things are just meant to drive you out of your position and make you speculate on your own decisions. Like you literally made the decision to buy it at the bottom. Don't get shaken out because of all these other things that are happening. But also don't be scared to like take profits. Like a lot of people, if they would have taken profits at the top, they could have gotten another entry down here again, right? Like I'm not good at that, so I don't even try. But like, to be honest, most people are here to make money, right? And if that's your goal, then you need to actually focus on those types of things. I've tried chasing the golden object in front of me. I did all right on Solana meme coins. Not enough to change my life though, right? Like, and not enough. I never even was tempted to like do something that would compromise my position in this industry or like make a crazy decision on a speculative thing that has no real value, right? A meme, it's a meme coin. Like it's in the name. It's meant to literally do nothing except for cause excitement, speculation. And then, then they end up down the road trying to figure things out where they're like, oh, let's add some utility. And the only time I've literally ever seen that work is with something like Snack, right? Or maybe Hosky, I could use as an example. And even then, you take it to a higher level, Dogecoin, right? Like they're literally doing the same thing. They're trying to find ways to give it utility now. It wasn't the first thought. And that's why, I tie it all back into Cardano. That's why I got into Cardano, because that was the forefront of the thinking. We don't care about all these speculative things. We want to have research. Our papers are driven off of that, and we have a long-term roadmap and plan. And I couldn't agree with Viva more. That's why I'm participating with Intersect, right? That's why I'm involved and always try to get involved in any governance things that I can. That's why I've been one of the most critical people in the world about Catalyst, right? Like, you can check my history. I'm not afraid to say what's on my mind ever. I never shy away from the truth. And that's what I love about these MBOs and people starting to take over, is that's what it's truly supposed to be about. You saw the first step, right? Transfer of the GitHub repos. Intersect now owns all of the GitHub repos from the founding entities. Amazing, right? Like that's a great first step. But now let's get to the next step, right? Before this market returns, let's go ahead and burn those keys, right? Let's really give it to the people and let's let the people manage it. Is it going to be perfect all the time? Absolutely not, right? But it's better than anything else out there, in my opinion, in terms of governance and what people. This chain hosts so many smart people, right? People that aren't out there. They don't give a shit about Twitter. They don't care about being out in the open and having this limelight on them. They care about doing good, right? For the sake of doing good. That's why we have all this open source technology. That's why we have all these open working groups. You look at the stuff that's happened over the past 3 weeks in Cardano, right? You had the Cardano builder meetup, right? I can't even imagine the ideas that were being bounced around there. I refuse to believe that another chain is doing it that well. Like there's no way that they're meeting up hundreds of developers and they're literally working together, not to make money, but to create a better future for all of us that do want to make money, right? Or want to create something special. So, for me, Builder Fest was really cool to see. And then obviously I watched this morning the Catalyst rollout. I literally went so many times where I was like, man, this is broken. This is stupid. I hate it. I'm so mad because we didn't get funded, right? We tried really hard to get funded. We thought we had earned our place. And guess what? We got a reality check. The space told us, no, you're not ready yet. And you take it on the chin, you come back, and I didn't do a single shred of marketing on our last round of Catalyst, and both of our proposals got approved. So that to me says, like, if you stick at it long enough and you try hard enough, you can make a difference. People will notice it, and they'll give you the credit and props that you're due. So, this time we're going to roll out the red carpet. We're going to try and do some really crazy stuff with Catalyst. Obviously I'm not here to shill. I just love the opportunity. And I think it's so fair that, I wasn't one of the people who thought it was fair at first, but now that I've seen what it can do for me and I was in that position, I know that anybody else can get there. Like there's obviously people with a lot of ADA. Don't get it twisted. Some of the same things that Viva was talking about happen on Cardano, right? That's the nature of this industry, period. It's so hard to get away from that, and they always say, just buy more ADA, bro, right? It's not that easy. You have to actually network. You have to get your name out there, and you have to earn the trust of the people who have all the ADA to spend, and you will get your proposals approved. You don't have to do anything weird to get it. You don't have to compromise your ethics. You just have to get after it, right? And I'm hoping we can have a successful round this time and see a lot more people get funded, right? That's always the goal, is to see new people get funded, to see different companies who have never had the chance. And to me, it's like a stimulus check with utility, right? Like you're stimulating your own economy in Cardano because you're putting money back into the builders, right? And the builders are creating these open source tools. They're creating all these different things that are only going to provide value to Cardano. You saw the new category that they pushed, right? Crazy. I can't wait for that. I hope somebody really pops in with something spectacular there, goes for a full 2 million, right? Why not? Go for the whole thing and bring me, I don't even know, who would I think of off the top of my head? I don't know, bring in somebody crazy and let's really do it the right way. We're doing it the right way. And I think that that's what will set us apart from everybody else in the future. That's what fills the void that Viva's talking about. It takes away some of that manipulation because nobody's just going to come in and be like, I want this, I'm going to take it, right? You can't. It's not that easy. You have to actually get involved in order to try and extract money from this ecosystem. So, that's my 2 cents. I do think there's still people who hold huge, tremendous ADA bags, and they do benefit from these swings. They do sell on the upticks, right? I don't think it's really that easy to avoid, and it honestly won't be avoidable. But at a certain point, it becomes so decentralized because that money, they can't just not sell it forever, right? They will sell, more people will buy, it'll get distributed. But I'm not a macro guy. I'm just a look at the big picture guy and try and do my part. But I love listening to Viva, man. He's just so smart.
Yeah, kudos to Viva. Really dropping a ton of knowledge here, not just for us, but also the viewers. We've got over, I think, a couple hundred viewers tuning in between X and YouTube. Definitely do appreciate y'all tuning in here. Make sure to drop that thumbs up, share the content if you guys are getting some value out of this. We will be turning it over to community questions here in just a couple of seconds. But Cash actually rolled us into one topic that I want to quickly highlight, which I'll be providing more dedicated content to in a couple of next days here, which is Project Catalyst. But before I talk about Project Catalyst, I wanted to highlight this strategy here as well, which is what you guys both mentioned, buying and holding. I don't think enough people put an emphasis on that. A lot of people want to try and trade, want to try and leverage up, and I'll be the first to raise my hand. I've tried those things, right? And I'm talking back in 2021, coming in late after, the Facebook hype, the metaverse hype, and then trying to do all these crazy things to try to catch up. It never works. The only way that you're able to really get ahead is by DCAing over the long term and really just being here when everybody steps away. As a quick just aside here, when Cash was with me in the background, I mentioned to him, when I first came into the space, didn't know a lick of anything about Cardano, crypto, Bitcoin, etc. I was really just trying to find my way and how I could contribute. And I found that, going through the content creation side of things was the best way for me to do it. But I reached out to another creator who's pretty big here in the space, over 300 some thousand subscribers. And the one piece of advice that he gave me was, you just need to be here and put your reps in during the bear market. And I look back now, at my personal channel, my personal growth journey, I realize I'm not the macro guy. I realize I'm not the developer. But what I do realize is that, hey, I can create content and I can provide value and I can be the messenger I don't have to try to be what other people are. I just have to find my own lane and just abide in that. And so what I've learned in that process was I was able to become a better speaker, a better creator. I've grown my network. I've been able to buy ADA at 30 or 25 cents. I've been able to do all these things, but that was just because I didn't step away from the space, where I think a lot of people do get discouraged. They only come in when there's these tops. And then as soon as the price reverses, then it's like immediately asking, why is my investment going down? This is just all a rug. But I'm like, well, you missed the majority of the move. You should have been here 8 months ago. If you're just coming into the space now 2 or 3 months ago, you're probably down if you're invested in altcoin, at least, because of course they've been bleeding greatly compared to Bitcoin. So I just want to highlight that there and really just touch on buying and hodling, being here even when there's nobody, and obviously enjoying it when everybody does come back into the space. The last thing I want to jump into as we get ready to take some questions is Project Catalyst. So Cash mentioned the updates or the recent changes, and I want to dive into that, but I want to quickly plug in the stream for anybody who missed it. You can jump over to the official Cardano Spot website, which is cardanospot.io, and from there they've got the full recap. It's about 8 hours long, actually. So from literally the beginning of the event all the way till the last chat, we had a conversation with Frederick Agard, the head of the Cardano Foundation. You can catch all that live on replay. One of the biggest pieces there, of course, was the upgrades or the changes coming to Project Catalyst. So again, I'll be providing more content diving into this, but there is one particular slide I want to highlight. So here we've got sort of the Catalyst recap. You're breaking down the impact that Catalyst has had. And of course, it's not perfect. Like Cash mentioned, there's been instances where, the team at Catalyst doesn't get things right, but they try to iterate and they try to do it better. You take a look at software development. It's the very same thing. You develop something, you put it out there, you've got an alpha, you got an MVP, and you come back, you listen to what the community has to say, and you improve on it. You provide future updates. It's no different with Project Catalyst. So it's good to see that the team has been listening. And as a result of that, they've added a brand new category. So Catalyst has officially kicked off today on April 26th, and we should have the onboarding completing in July or August. As a part of that, we saw this brand new Cardano partners in RWI category being added. So from a bigger perspective, right, Catalyst has historically been for the small fish, the people actually building here within the ecosystem, the grassroots movement. But moving forward, there's a brand new category with an allocation of 8 million ADA. Right now, that's somewhere around $3.6, $3.7 million that will now be allocated to bringing on board tier one partners. So Cash, you mentioned, some names. I'm thinking like Mercedes, Nike, Google, Huawei. Like these are the types of brands that we want to bring into Cardano. And there's now some from Catalyst to allow for these bigger players or for some of these bigger partnerships to really come about. So as you can see there in the slide, 500,000 ADA is the minimum, and the maximum you can get allocated is 2 million ADA. Now, granted, there are stipulations. You have to be an actual business. So it's not like myself, Cash, or Viva can say, hey, we want 2 million ADA to go strike a partnership with some big name brand. You have to actually have a business, and that business has to have been running for at least, I think they mentioned a year or two, and it also has to be generating $5 million. So again, this is not an offer for the small fish. But if you are an owner of a big business, right, this is going to be huge. One other thing that they also touched on was the fact that this is not going to go through the traditional timeline. Of course, you can imagine with, millions of dollars on the line here for one particular proposal, they want to make sure that it's vetted. And this ties back directly into the Intersect MBO. They mentioned that the Intersect committee will actually be judging or providing a short list of entries that submit proposals for this brand new category. So I wanted to end off on this note here, really touching on this. Want to maybe turn it back over to you, Cash, and then also you, Viva. What are your thoughts surrounding this? Are you happy? Are there other changes that you would like to see implemented? Again, I'll be coming up with my own video. There's a ton of other changes, but this was obviously the main highlight. So I'll let Cash go first this time, and then Viva will come over to you surrounding Project Catalyst.
My time to shine. Not talking about the macro anymore. I can finally, I felt my tongue moving the whole time. I'm like, oh, let me get after it. So first of all, I love this, right? Like this is so smart. I love the stipulations. I love that they put in clauses for this. I love that you have to prove that you're a real business. There's not many people who are going to meet those qualifications on Cardano, right? So what does that mean? How does somebody achieve this type of a proposal, right? They have to now go out and market Cardano. They have to find their connections, right? They need to leverage their real life connections to be able to find somebody who can make a proposal like this happen, right? So for me, I think of it from Anvil's perspective, because we had an hour and a half long meeting on Catalyst today as a company, right? We've been a company for 2.5 years, right? We don't meet the revenue requirements, right? But we have real life advisors who have connections to these types of things. And what something like this does more than anything, and this is what I want people to really understand why it's so important, it takes the risk out of investing and trying to investigate what a blockchain can do for a real company. When we talk to Web2 companies, and I've talked to quite a few of them at this point, right, through our advisors, the biggest thing is always, I know the founder, right? He's not going to want to invest into a Web3 project. He's not going to want to put money into this, right? So what Catalyst, and not even just this category alone, right? Catalyst as a whole gives me, as a Cardano native company, this opportunity to pitch Cardano and say, hey, let's take the risk out of you trying to join the blockchain by making a joint Catalyst proposal, right? People know the Anvil name, that we can leverage our name and what you've been able to accomplish as a real world brand, and we can bring it to Cardano together, right? And you've seen some of those proposals before, right? Like Patrick from Endmaker got with Finest, right? And they have RWAs, things like that, right? Like there's going to be a lot of real world connections starting to happen, right? You're going to be seeing some real estate companies. You're going to be seeing all these different types of actual use cases, right? They have to be real use cases. It can't just be like, Mercedes, you brought up Mercedes-Benz. Would it be great? Yeah, but what are they going to do? You know what I mean? What brings them to the blockchain? It's a hard thing to answer. It's literally something that everybody asks us. Why? Why blockchain? We can do this in Web 2 already. Why should I go to Cardano? Well, let's just start with market reach, right? You have a 3%, like generally speaking, a 3% market reach in Web 2. When you move over to Web 3, you unlock a global market, right? And I've gotten these slide decks from companies, like real companies, real brands, professional soccer teams that start with man, like actually I've talked to them and they say very clear, 3% with Web 2, 35% with Web 3. That's their engagement rate. That's how much they can market. That's like literally what they're getting out of Web 3, right? Is it going to be something that changes the world? Probably not. But is it going to be some really cool novel use case for NFTs or the blockchain in general as a ledger to store metadata, information, tickets, royalties, things like that? Absolutely, right? And it's up to us to kind of create these examples to pitch to them and then say, hey, you know what? I know it's scary, right? Let's mitigate the risk by doing a Catalyst proposal together. And I literally did this. It all clicked for me in a call last week when I was talking to a Web 2 brand. And this was what they were like, why? Why blockchain? And I'm like, because you can do a DAO. You can have a bigger pool of money to do what you were already doing with your small single use case, right? Now you can include more people, like a franchise, right? Imagine a franchise ran by a DAO with a decentralized treasury, right? You have all that multi-sig governance. You can vote on things as a group. It's like literally running a business as a group. Cardano can unlock that, and it can pay for it, and the experiment can be done through Catalyst. That's what I love about Catalyst now, that I've really had the time to think about it and what it can do and what it's done for us, right? Like we were able to fund 2 open source projects that benefit Cardano directly, right? But any idea can be literally proposed in Catalyst and has the chance of getting improved if it makes sense. So honestly, man, I got so much love for that team now. I was so critical of them and I feel so bad about it because the whole last Catalyst, like, Dan was in my DMs. He was answering my questions. He's just a good dude. The rest of them clearly care a lot. So, as somebody who cares a lot about this myself, I got to say I respect what they're doing and they listen. More importantly than anything, they do listen. They try to make the changes and for the most part, they do a good job. So, I'm sure people will still be mad this round, but guess what? you'll get over the hump. And when you get funded, you got to give them their love. That's the most important thing of all of it, right? Show love when it's due. And I'm just happy to see what the next round is going to hold. I think it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, you're definitely shining in that area. I think we need to bring you back on for more Catalyst conversations with the amount of experience that you've got there, really showing. I think to your last thing right there at the end, you have to be critical, right? Otherwise, how do they know what they need to fix? So I think the biggest thing is being able to see that they are making those updates. I know there was sort of a lull between funding round number 10 and 11, and then we saw a lot of changes introduced in 11. And then to see right on the back of that, more changes, I'm like, okay, these guys are actually going through the numbers, getting a better understanding of what needs to be done and adjusting things. And, one other thing that I noticed too was some of the reallocation for the budgets. So they took a look and said, hey, in these categories where people are asking for less amounts, well, let's maybe just lower the cap there and then shift the funds into other categories where there weren't enough projects that were funded, right? So I think, again, it goes to really show that yes, it does move slow, but they're doing their due diligence, looking at times past and seeing how can we improve and make things better. Now, to touch on one of the things that you mentioned there, the use cases. Yes, I do think that whoever we partner up with, they have to obviously provide Cardano value. But I think, for example, I forget the name. Is it VeChain that's in like the octagon for the UFC? I'm like, man, I'm not necessarily sure that the UFC is using any sort of blockchain tech, but it's good from a visibility standpoint. So I think there is a little bit of that as well. Obviously, it makes it even better when they can actually use the blockchain to be like, hey, not only are we promoting Cardano, we're actually using the tech, right? You're almost putting your money where your mouth is. That's the best sort of partnership that you could have. But I think just generally speaking, you can take a look at supply chain management. That applies to almost every single business that I know. So for example, Mercedes-Benz, hey, you probably want to keep track of, how many cars you have in inventory or whatever the case is, and be able to show that and say, hey, these metrics aren't manipulated, or we've sold X amount of vehicles and we've kept that information on the blockchain. And I feel like something like that is generic enough to where that can be applied to any sort of business. Similarly, just taking a look at e-commerce. There's a comment that actually just came in here from Luke. Let me just quickly go ahead and read it. He talks about mobile access. I think about, e-commerce, taking physical shops, bringing them online. This is how we're able to do that. Now, yes, we might have to have some tech stacks being built to support that directly here in Cardano, but these are the sort of ideas and these are the sort of partnerships that we want to think about moving forward. So just want to quickly touch on that. And I want to say that I agree with what you said. And yeah, Catalyst has gotten a lot of flack, but it seems like the tide is finally and slowly starting to turn. So Viva, I want to give you an opportunity to chime in with respect to Catalyst, and then we'll take a couple of questions and then we'll go ahead and wrap up today's stream.
Perfect. So a couple things. One, around Catalyst and the changes. So they did make improvements, which is good because you get to see that over time we can make decisions and improve things. Instead of cementing ourselves into a single idea or a single trajectory or timeline, stuff develops over time. And I saw that wakey comment. I'll leave my my feedback for that because I do have a little rebuttal or thought process. But here's a couple issues that I have with Catalyst still. The first one is you have a problem with wallet weights. Now, you could say that pushes us closer to being like a plutocracy, and these handful of mega whale wallets still get to make decisions. Now, removing downvoting helped because they can't go to every other proposal and downvote things that they're not even interested in or don't see a negative in, but it gives them an overarching competitive advantage across anything. They're only allowed to support who they want to support. However, I think it has to go one step further. And my thought is, if you have anywhere from 5 to 80 million ADA and these people that are voting, then you have the weight to sway pretty much any vote that you want to sway. But you're going to have to choose, because you can't sway every vote, even if it isn't applicable to you, even if you don't have skin in the game, and you get together with whoever you're working with and you're like, I'll upvote these 10 things and I'll upvote that, and we'll just leave every independent idea out in the ether, and then they have to campaign for 3 months and be able to vote. Now, you could take a direction of doing some type of quadratic voting and like diminish the amount, which I think in trying to play around with the idea is actually a negative way to go about it, because these whale wallets, regardless of how you feel about them, they were here early. And I'll tell you what, if it was you, you would be sitting there saying like, I don't care. I can do whatever the hell I want with my ADA. I bought it at that time. So be it. Now, it is mutually beneficial to them to have the chain succeed over time. Being the king of nothing means nothing. So they want to see the space improve, but they also have vested interests in a lot of these companies that guides their decision making. I think you could fix a lot of the voting by making one single change. Every ADA that you vote with is only usable a single time. And that's it. Let's say you have 10 million ADA and you're like, I want to go in and support the things I want to support. Okay, you have 10 million ADA. Do you want to pass that proposal? Or do you want to split it up 5 and 5 in between the two that you like the most or you think are the most impactful? Or maybe 2.5 to each of the four because you know another guy and you have enough votes on the other one? But you can't take 10 million ADA and shock and awe every single vote on a positive right over and over again, because then the weight isn't just about the amount of ADA, it is the amount of times that you can use that amount of ADA, which makes it almost negligible having anyone else participate in Catalyst unless you have years worth of experience in networking, which is Catalyst did it, or Anvil did it phenomenally, and they showed it could be done. But good luck to a lot of good ideas or infrastructure that we need in the short term getting funding if someone comes out on a whim and they're like, hey, no one here knows me, but I've had this phenomenal idea. It's just going to get thrown to the wayside. So that's the one change that I'll continue to say I think we should make. And I still think it's fair for the larger wallets. You have every single vote that you purchased, and if I have a lot less, I can still only use it once, but I'm not going in there trying to sway the entire Catalyst process. So that's my one gripe I'll continue to highlight. When it comes to that new incentive of bringing these other partners or companies in, I also have a couple different thoughts on that. One, people in this space have a very hard time understanding what we need. A lot of people in crypto do not understand the nature of this industry and why it started. And that's where you see a lot of misconstrued, disingenuous garbage getting the spotlight as of the last cycle, because people are bored and they want paid. And they're like, oh, well, what if we had gaming? That'll be fun. Doesn't matter if you cannot stabilize and protect it. Like, it all round trips inevitably unless the base chain and the things that you need from security, decentralization, scalability, you have to address that stuff. So if we're going to put aside a fund to bring in companies, you should want to be able to fix or address a broad problem or something that is already being done in traditional finance or traditional business that almost needs crypto, because cryptocurrency adoption will never come from marketing and it will never come from venture capital. You'll get a pump that will rip your face off and take you to the moon and everyone's all excited, but you're not going to get adoption because there's nothing really underpinning it. And we don't need 99% of this stuff in this market. If you want adoption, you have to solve problems. And I work a lot with payroll, and I'm at a payroll company at the moment. And I've dug through every marketplace partner and everything that we could do, because a lot of people are starting to ask, like, hey, 30 million people in the US are actively in the crypto market in one way or another. People want to get paid in cryptocurrency. Like, could you bring in one of those large payroll companies and start to build out APIs and connectors that allow not only a ledger and a breakdown from the blockchain where people are getting paid, but you can sync that up maybe to a traditional tech stack or a platform that it's going out where it's compliant. That to me is not only a multi-billion-dollar industry in hundreds of millions of people getting paid, but they're already asking for it and they're going to have to adapt to it ASAP. Or when you look at an election coming up in the fall. And I think this is why Charles pushes a lot on blockchain voting, in the verification of decision-making in traditional governance in general, or just economics, whatever it might be. We already have proven that we have a need for that. So utilize the current environment that we're in, where a lot of people in the US are diametrically opposed to one another and saying like, no, like you're not only wrong, you're evil, everyone's fighting. But the one thing everyone can come to a general consensus and agree upon is they do not trust the government. And for as much as the government doesn't necessarily care about whether or not you trust them, it's getting to a breaking point where if no one accepts the outcome of this election and everyone's fighting over it, because it doesn't matter who wins. Half of Americans don't trust the outcome if it isn't that side, or they're just over it and they're like, okay, well, we're checking out, we're done. You have a ton of different civil unrest issues and things that need to be addressed. Those are things that cryptocurrency can actively achieve right now. Like looking at those types of companies or individuals that are forward thinking in that industry or any given industry, we can address real tangible problems immediately instead of focusing on marketing or bringing in a celebrity or, and don't get me wrong, I love the aspect of Web3 gaming and crypto gaming. It is like the absolute bottom rung on my ladder of importance, because if the infrastructure isn't sound against the weight of everything else in every decision made and you can't protect it, you're going to build it and someone's going to come over and just sweep it up. They're like, well, that was a fun little experiment. And then you're going to be back getting charged 50% royalties on your Amazon run NFT marketplace. And everyone's going to say, this is adoption. This is great. But you're still back in this exact same spot that you were in. So I like the idea. I just think that a lot of people are not missing the mark on what we need in the space, but like we need more education about what does traditional finance need that this space can provide. And you have to find a combination of a mutual benefit, not just someone that could make money or expand their marketing reach in cash. I like the idea, like you can expand your reach, but what if you could also provide a solution and solve a wide standing problem of how people get paid or how people utilize their voice in a traditional way? Stuff like that, I think, resonates with those types of companies because they're getting, it doesn't matter what their bottom line is or if their stock is super high, they're getting crushed by every comment, every interview, every expectation on how to translate this, and they can't figure it out. If you approach them with a more authentic outlook of saying, we're going to come and meet in the middle, explain why this is important, and you get to be, again, once again, because any Fortune 500 company likely was on the forefront of innovating something. Guess what? You get to be on the forefront again of innovating the next stage of this. And that is going to resonate with them more so than telling them, oh, you have more eyes. Like they're a multi-billion-dollar company. Do it again. Be on top again and allow us to build what comes next. That's my outlook, but I'll stop my rant because I could go off on, I have different examples, different industries and approach thoughts, but you know.
You raised some interesting points. And I mean, I see Shaggy Rack, he's going off in the comments right now. He's got a lot of interesting bits of feedback. So I'd love to maybe carry this conversation on in a separate chat or in a separate stream, because again, we've been going for a little bit near an hour and a half. So I want to respect the time that you guys have obviously given me, and I want to respect my viewers' time here as well. But a lot of comments coming in as soon as we started talking about voting and, people talking about DIDs, one vote per wallet. And, yeah, there's just a lot going on there in the comments. But as we get ready to wind things down, I do want to just quickly touch on the piece that came in here from Wakey and his DeFi investor guy. So let's just maybe, again, we have to keep this very, very brief here. Any of you guys want to take a shot first?
Let me take my shot and then Viva can go. Mine's very simple. Just buy some ADA, bro.
There you go. So my 2 cents, and I'll let Viva go last. And this is to Wakey is, why are you here, right? Obviously, financial freedom, that's one of those aspects. But we talked about earlier, the two types of like mentalities in the space, right? You've got like the Solana meme casino people, and then you've got the people that are here for what the actual tech brings and the change and the freedom and the sovereignty that crypto and blockchain brings, right? So I would say it depends, because you've obviously had the chat with your DeFi expert, and he's basically telling you Cardano's worthless. Well, if you're only focused on price, then maybe his argument stands, right? Yes, Cardano hasn't been the top performing coin, but I can also tell you it's not the worst performing coin. There's a list of other coins that I can name that are performing worse than Cardano. Again, we're not in this alt season that a lot of people are expecting for us to be in. And if you're solely focused on price, then yeah, you could maybe go with that argument saying that, hey, Cardano hasn't performed like Solana, hasn't performed like Ethereum, etc. If you take a look at Cardano from a perspective of what has been built here in the ecosystem, by far one of the fastest growing ecosystems, by far one of the strongest. Take a look at that Builder Fest we took a look at. I think over a couple hundred developers, showed up, took the time to fly over to France and to network and to do all these things. Take a look at governance. We're right at that point where a lot of this stuff is going to be in the community's hands. So again, I think when I look at comments like this, you have to go back and ask yourself, wakey, what are you here for? And if it's solely just for the price appreciation, then yes, I do think that there are other cryptos out there. But if you want more than that, then I think Cardano is by far one of the leaders in terms of actual tangible products. Like Cardano has actually made an impact. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not sure if you want to add anything here, but I do also want to quickly touch on a piece here that Richard had mentioned, which was about the USDA token. There's been a little bit of speculation about that. I know people have been talking about USDC, USDM, but just recently we heard that there could be a huge bit of news about USDA, which is a stable coin found and built, I believe, and backed by Emergo. So interesting piece to raise there as well. Richard, I'll have some content coming out about that. So Viva, you've got the last word here. Any response to Wakey, talking about Cardano's performance compared to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana?
Yeah. So the first thing is when you're looking at ADA, I remember just in 2020, right before the last halving, ADA dropped very briefly that day when the world was shut down to just under like 2 cents. And I think Bitcoin at the time was around like 4K. So if we're looking at how they've appreciated over time, it hasn't been bad, but they're both still here, where a lot of experts, especially DeFi experts, love that passive yield on Terra from Luna Terra's Anchor protocol. I've come to learn that experts, especially traditional finance experts that have like hardline, unmalleable mindsets, are usually the last people I would listen to. Now, I'm not giving you that advice, but I also saw down below you were calling out like someone's Palestine flag colors and like their PFP. I don't know if you're just like here to poke and prod and have a little bit of a back and forth engagement wise with the people in the chat. But realistically, if it comes down to your Bitcoin DeFi expert, which is kind of odd, like, oh, just buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the last place anyone could even go for DeFi. So this DeFi expert all of a sudden is saying to go over to the original chain that everyone should have been buying this entire time first if they understood this market. And he's telling you to get out of ADA and go over and utilize the smart contracts there, which are also built very similarly to our same smart contract language. And there's a lot of understanding from our community and the value in the stuff people are building out there. So it seems a little weird in how it's phrased. Maybe you should question them. When did they come into this market? Have they been here for, a couple cycles, or are they familiar with UTXO, extended UTXO, things like that? And then, maybe we could have a follow-up. Next time there's a live one, you could come on, give whatever rebuttal they have. It would be great. But realistically, same thing I tell anyone. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. Put your money wherever you want. And if you feel confident with it, that's fine. Part of the problem in this space, when Cash is like, oh, I just like to buy and hold, or like me for buying and holding, like, yeah, there's times to rotate and there are things that you can do. There is a complete impatience to this market or to investing, and everyone wants generational wealth by 2025, no exceptions. And I will tell you, 95% of people are going to lose everything like they do every time every time across the crypto market. Every individual investor gets fleeced and destroyed in traditional markets. People have been trying to buy precious metals and just getting shorted into the abyss by JP Morgan for over a decade. Retail's always on the wrong side of the trade because you can't even establish a market for yourself if they've removed the buy buttons, or if, oh, now people are starting to make money and there's a market that's open 24 hours a day away from them. Well, we'll kick around the idea of doubling capital gains tax. Like that is the actual outcome of the conversations that are happening in Congress at the moment. So why not focus on what is stable in this space? Why would I price it in US dollars? Because once you move it back there, that's it. Good luck porting it back in, or when they update it to a CBDC, or when they have to bail you in, you have no control over it. So if none of that matters to you, I heard that Slurf, that garbage meme token on Solana, outperformed everything. And your DeFi expert should have said go all in on that, because that's where the biggest gains were. However, it doesn't matter. Like it's like trying to talk to an expert outside of a casino so they can tell you what game to go to. Bitcoin's been around forever. Cardano coded the same way to try and extend that exact same vision. Any other value proposition you see outside of that and how it's positioned, feel free, have at it.
If I could, right? There's really no such thing as a DeFi expert in the first place. Like that in itself is a meme. And there's this very famous saying, don't feed the troll, right? This is clearly a troll. Like you read through his comments, like, come on, man. Like Viva said, if he was a DeFi expert, right? Did you buy dog whiff hat? Is that in your portfolio, right? Like, do you know how silly that sounds? Like when there's things that actually have real life use cases, I think that if anybody's a DeFi expert, and I hate to put this on Viva, but like I followed a lot of his trades and done okay. Like he makes free posts and he talks about things that he likes, right? He's not claiming to be an expert. He's talking about things that he has passion and drive for. And a lot of them, I did my own research on them. I studied them and I liked what they represented, and I went and bought them. I commonly refer Sil and Viva to people when they ask me who they should follow for not advice, right? For more like ideas, right? So I don't know, man. DeFi expert. That's still really funny to me, but obviously this dude's trolling. So that's my piece.
Well,
sorry, one last thing to add on to that. So now I'm in, I guess I would call it my 9th year in crypto, and I'm still learning stuff every single day. It has evolved and imploded and evolved and imploded across the industry so many times that, like, right now there was a massive existential shift on Bitcoin in and of itself being here forever. And you have people that have held Bitcoin forever. They hate that, but everything is constantly evolving. Like you can't just have one assertion of here's where value is. It has to be over time. You have to be able to protect it. If you cannot keep the money that you make, you have made nothing. And if you take profits and you put it into somewhere and you can't protect those either, you have made nothing. So solve that problem or go to places that are working towards solving that problem. And that is where the value is. And I'll say this, I've said it, I've made tweets about it. If for some reason Cardano just came out and utterly failed, made a terrible decision, started to break, I would have to accept it and move along and focus on different things. You cannot just marry an idea of like one particular direction. But yeah, I think that those ideas of experts or advisors or anything else, like I'm the last person that's going to say like, oh, listen to me. I don't want to be responsible for anyone's decisions. And I assume the risk of the decisions that I take, and I'm patient enough to sit here 4 years at a time and allow them to play out or not. Sorry for you going.
No, not a problem. I mean, obviously a really good conversation. I do want to just let Wakey, I mean, thank you for obviously raising the question. don't take it personal, but you've got a response to your initial question about your DeFi experts. So hopefully you found that to be valuable. I'll just end off on that particular topic by saying that hindsight is 2020. It's easy to tell somebody what to go into after you've already seen it pump, right? So nobody would have known how ADA would have performed. Nobody knew how Solana was going to perform. Nobody knew how Dog with Hat or any of these tokens would perform until after the fact. So just keep that in mind as well. I do want to give a quick shout out here as we get ready to close things down to Cardano with Paul for tuning in here. Paul, definitely appreciate you stopping by. I saw you actually in the other live stream going on earlier with Crypto Crow and CCV. That was an awesome one. Guys, make sure to go and check that out. Pretty cool chat there with some of the bigger influencers here in the space. I think that will do it here for today's live stream. Again, I think we could probably go for a couple of hours more. But this has been an awesome run here with the introduction of Cash to the channel. I appreciate you tuning in here, Cash. Again, if you guys want to find out more about him, ADA Anvil or wayup.io, the link to his particular X profile is left down below. If you guys love Viva's macro outlook on just the economy and where we are, even though sometimes it hurts to listen to his perspective because it's not always about the token price going up, make sure to follow him down there on X as well. I appreciate everybody tuning in here. We've got P, we've got David Jr., we've got Batman, Shaggy Rax, Wakey. We had Davida here. We have No Name. Really, thank you all for tuning in. Zimcoin as well. Lucas, thank you all for, chatting, keeping the conversation going. This has been a blast, and we'll definitely look forward to doing this on a much more frequent basis, of course, as their time schedules allow. So again, shout out to Viva and Cash for joining me here today. And on that note, we'll catch you all in the next one. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.